Welcome to the Eden Mead Career Information Session. I'm Andre Lugg, PVCC's Career Services Manager, and today we're talking about mental health careers. My guests are Kathleen Sams, Program Director of Compass Counseling Services of Virginia, and Kathleen has worked with clients aged 18 months to 60 years, diagnosed primarily with developmental disabilities. She has a Master of Science degree in Applied Behavior Analysis from Spalding University. Kelly Logan is the Self-Sufficiency Supervisor for the Charlottesville Department of Social Services and has been employed by the City of Charlottesville for 23 years. She has a Bachelor of Social Work from James Madison University. And David Wilkerson is the chair of the School of Counseling for the Charlottesville High School. And he has been employed by Charlottesville High School for the past 3 years. He has a postgraduate degree in mental health counseling from the University of Virginia and an undergraduate degree in communications from James Madison University. Welcome to each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us today. Kelly, I'm going to start with you, but this question will go to all of you. How did you get started in your profession, and what career path did you take?
I started at James Madison University, and I always knew that I wanted to, of course, be in the helping profession. But social work offered a variety of opportunities. So I learned early on that social workers could be in hospitals, in schools, juvenile justice, also social services. So it just seemed like there was a lot of different opportunities that I could reach out to people. So that's why I chose to go into social work.
Good. Kathleen.
I began my career in Louisville, Kentucky. It really kind of started with babysitting when I was younger. Finally started babysitting a young boy diagnosed with autism and realized that working with individuals with developmental disabilities was really rewarding and something I wanted to do. I went on and got my degree in psychology at the University of Louisville, and then went straight into getting my master's in applied behavior analysis, which is really the study of human behavior change. And it's an evidence-based practice for people with autism. So that was kind of my way to get in and start in this profession.
Okay. David?
Like Kelly, I don't need a microphone.
You're on.
Oh, okay. Doesn't sound like it to me, but I'll trust that it's there. We go. I went to JMU as well, and unlike Kelly, I had no idea that I wanted to be a counselor. I was intent on being Tom Brokaw at the time, and I was a broadcast journalism major. And after interning at Channel 29 in Charlottesville, concluded that was not what I wanted to do. And I think that's just as important as deciding what you do want to do. So I spent the next 4 years as an adult with a degree that I didn't think was relevant, trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted. And that's an amazing time in your 20s when you're not responsible for anybody but yourself to figure out who you are. Then I got married and had to get serious. So I got hired on to teach English at Fork Union Military Academy, where I discovered that those kids need some counseling. And you can use literature as a means of doing that. And after 3 years at Fork Union, I went to UVA to study mental health counseling, thinking that I would be a therapist, but found my way to school counseling mostly because we had a baby and I needed to make more than the slave wages they were paying for the first few years as a mental health counselor. But now I've found exactly where I belong.
So, David, what is mental health counseling?
See if I can remember from graduate school. I always thought of it as being a tour guide through someone else's psyche. The goal is to be able to talk and mostly listen to someone as they explore whatever it is that's not working for them in their lives. I think everyone can benefit from mental health counseling, and most of the skills that mental health counselors have are largely innate. There's a class called Basic Counseling Skills, essentially, which really just reinforces the nature of a truly empathic person. And anyone can benefit from talking about their feelings and their frustrations and all the things that are and are not working well in their lives.
Okay. And Kelly, what is self-sufficiency?
Well, I think that question, it depends on who you talk to. Traditionally, I think most people would say self-sufficient is not relying on anyone else to meet your basic needs. I don't believe that that is true of anyone. I think we all rely on someone for something at all points in our lives. But I think for our clients at social services, we have to help them decide what self-sufficiency means for them. I think it's different for each individual, depending on what career they have, depending on what they may have a child that has, developmental disabilities or a learning disability where they may need to be at home and have to rely on Medicaid. They may not be able to work outside the home and get, traditional insurance options through their employer. So we have to look at each person's situation individually and see what their abilities are, and also what training or other opportunities, counseling, what other supports they may need to help them, reach their potential.
So you would say that there are varying degrees of self-sufficiency. It just depends upon the person or the situation they're in.
I think it depends on what is acceptable and necessary for that particular person. I wouldn't say that it's varying degrees, but it's what's right for that particular person, what's best.
Okay. And Kathleen, I'm getting you and Kelly mixed up with the K's.
Yeah.
So just
No
so
problem.
you know
You're
that,
fine.
okay? So Kathleen, you work with developmental disabilities. Can you tell us what developmental disabilities are?
Yeah, so developmental disabilities are really kind of a class of diagnoses, really pervasive, lifelong impairments, either physical or mental. A lot of diagnoses are like Down syndrome, intellectual disability, Fragile X, pervasive developmental disorders, autism. These are a lot of the diagnoses that are included with developmental diagnoses.
Okay. And what type of education and skills are needed for your positions?
So my position is a behavior analyst. That requires someone to have a master's degree and be certified by the Behavior Analytics Certification Board. So the master's program is typically a 2-year program. It requires between 2,000 and 500 supervised practicum hours for students. So that means that you are working in the field under the supervision of someone who is also a behavior analyst. As soon as you graduate, you have to take a certification exam, and then once you pass that, you're certified. Now, not every state requires this, but the state of Virginia requires you to be licensed by the Board of Medicine as well. So once you complete your master's and once you are certified, you have to apply for licensure in the state, and then you can practice as a behavior analyst.
In social services, the agency where I work, there are a lot of different positions. So we have the eligibility side, and then we also have the child welfare, adult protective services side. So there's varying requirements. With the eligibility side, degrees are preferred but not required, and those determine eligibility for TANF, SNAP, and Medicaid. And then on my team in particular, I have a couple of folks who don't have college degrees, and some have master's degrees. So I look for the best fit and the heart and who's going to best serve the client. So on the child welfare side, typically they're looking for a bachelor's degree in social work, and a lot of those folks go on to work on their master's degrees.
Most school counselors have a master's in school counseling. I went in the back door with a master's in mental health counseling. Everyone has to have a master's degree, and they have to have a pupil personnel services license from the Department of Education. It's renewable every 5 years.
So you each work with people who have, with some people anyway, who have some type of mental health issue. What are some of the mental health careers that you are aware of in your profession, or just in general? And anyone can take the question. I mean, people come from a psychology background, an education background, counseling background, medical background, but what are some of the careers are you aware of?
So in the field of behavior analysis, there are actually 3 levels to certification. So the first one is called a registered behavior technician. The requirement for that is someone who has a high school diploma and is really just excited about the field of behavior analysis. Then there are assistant behavior analysts and a behavior analyst. I would say the majority of my field works with the population of developmental disabilities. However, there are a couple of other branches to behavior analysis. One is the experimental side. So that's really doing research, figuring out if what we're doing is working. And a lot of those individuals are with schools or with bigger agencies like the Kennedy Krieger Institute or the May Clinic. Those are some areas people work. Another branch is called organizational behavior management. So that looks at big companies, how you can make healthy employment decisions, how you can increase production. So for a larger company, you could look at getting your numbers up. And that uses the science of behavior analysis as well. I have friends who work in school systems, who work privately with families, who have outpatient clinics. So there's kind of a big range where you can use your skills.
With social work, obviously the Bachelor of Social Work, and then moving on up to the master's level. We also have some licensed clinical social workers on staff, and then we also have social workers in several of the schools in town, and at Region 10, which is also a mental health organization in town.
There's a position called LPC, Licensed Professional Counselor, which requires an enormous number of hours of supervision, whereby you're making a minimal income and someone else is paying attention to every word you say to your clients. Once you're finished with that, then there's a licensure program, and you can even put up your own shingle. That's one of many options. If you're interested in being a counselor and you're talking about having a 2-year degree at this point, Region 10 has lots of opportunities for you to look into being exposed to the field without diving into the next level of education yet. There are group homes in town where you could work, and I think that might be a great way to get a taste of what it feels like to be sharing someone else's life.
Can you describe a typical day or week for you? I know that every day is different, but in general, what do you have to do?
Multiple meetings. I'm out in the community a lot, which my job allows me to do, and I absolutely love it. I was at a meeting with housing this morning for a training program that they are implementing. We are constantly dealing with crises, housing crises, childcare issues, mental health, depression, children maybe getting removed from the home. We need to find where this child can go. And there's a lot of overlap in the work that we do between the divisions, between eligibility and the child welfare, and also APS from time to time. We're constantly seeing clients, so it is never a dull day. We're constantly being called to deal with, because we see clients as they walk in. We don't always ask them to schedule an appointment, so if a client comes in, the expectation is that we get up and we go see them and we address that need. So we're always on the move.
So there are a lot of issues that you face. Kathleen and David, what type of issues do you face, mental health issues do you face with your clients?
This has been a fascinating year to be a school counselor in Charlottesville, Virginia. After August, we had teachers and students and community members suffering inordinately and in ways they didn't understand in many cases. So those issues manifested themselves in ways we couldn't have predicted. Oddly enough, we've had many fewer fights at the high school this year than we've ever had before, and I think somehow it's led to this unique sense of unity in our school community. But I also think our stress levels and our anxiety levels at the school are higher than they've ever been. And kids have needed to talk about that, as well as teachers and parents, for that matter. So it's led somehow to a heightened sense of the value of the school counseling program, because so many people have had to reconcile the fact that they've needed some counseling this year. But to answer the original question, we never know what's going to happen on any given day, and that's the beauty and the agony of the job.
Yeah.
So the primary things that we work on at Compass, we are a home-based behavior support program. So we are working with kids and also with their families, and we actually place a much bigger emphasis on working and supporting our families, both through training and through emotional support. Most of the mental health issues that we work with are really things that are happening for our parents. Being a parent of a kid with special needs is really a completely different world. So there are things that come up like not being able to run programs we're suggesting because they're exhausted and they're a single parent and they're balancing multiple jobs as well as being a parent to a kid with special needs. So our role is really to help support them, build them up, work on the things that are difficult for them, and figure out how we can help them make change. So really a lot of the mental health issues and things that we're working on are with the parents.
So do you provide any type of internship opportunities where you work?
So Compass does not provide internship opportunities. We do offer many different levels of employment and a pretty decent flexible schedule. Our requirement for being a part-time employee is to work 15 hours each week. And to work at Compass, all you need is a high school diploma and no barrier crimes on your record. So we are really able to work with students. We've worked with people who are getting their master's in counseling at UVA. We have some residents in counseling and social work who work with us as well. And then some people who are straight out of high school or straight out of their college program as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Same question.
Yes, we do accept interns on a regular basis, and we have for several years. There's a relationship with VCU, so we have a lot of master's level students come in and do internships at social services. We definitely want to support, higher education and furthering the degrees for folks, but we also have a large caseload where we need extra support. So it's a great training ground for the interns, but it also helps our agency and our families out.
And would those interns need to be in their junior or senior year of college?
Typically, yes.
Okay, all right. I would think you might not have internships, David?
Annually accept a single intern from UVA who's a graduate student. And what I found is that they bring energy and knowledge that we often don't have. I learned how to use Google Docs from my intern.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you could have an intern who might be working with you but not working with mental health. It could be IT, you said Google Docs, it could be a whole lot of different areas, perhaps.
Right, but that happened to be a mental health person who understood Google Docs.
That's even better.
There are no limits to the skills that we can pick up along the way.
Excellent. Now, Kathleen, you talked about barrier crimes. I'd like for you to explain what barrier crimes are, and then I have a follow-up question.
I will do my best. So I know barrier crimes are, I think, defined by the Department of Social Services. There's a series of crimes that if you have committed them and they are on your record, they kind of bar you from working with children in the state of Virginia. So all agencies who provide services with children require background checks in Virginia, and those are the things that pop up. It's something that we ask about in our application process, too, to try to start having those conversations before we offer someone a job. I don't know much other than that, unfortunately, like the types of crimes that are listed on there. I'm not as familiar with that information.
No, that's good. David, Kelly, would you happen to know what some of those crimes are? I mean, I know what some of them are, but I just wanted to hear from you.
It's typically crimes against persons, violent crimes. We do background checks for this state, and then it might be a national actually now, and then we do a Child Protective Services background check. So of course, if anything shows up there, you're not going to be able to work within our agency. But other crimes, obviously, felony, breaking and entering, malicious wounding, those are going to be if it's armed robbery or burglary, anything that is a violent crime against a person is going to keep you from working in human services.
Anyone who's committed a crime against an underage minor would absolutely not be allowed to work in a school. I'm trying to think of crimes that people have committed and been able to work in schools. I've been aware of people with driving under the influence other than that, I think it's pretty important to keep your nose clean.
Yeah, I mean, typically, my understanding is if you have any type of crime against a person, it could be child abuse, it could be rape, it could be assault and battery. You pretty much will not be able to get a job working with children, working with patients, working with people who are vulnerable. That's typically my understanding of barrier crimes as it pertains to the profession that you're in. But there are also barrier crimes, let's say if you're working in accounting, if you embezzled money, if you kited checks, if it was credit card fraud, that's a barrier crime to that type of industry. So what type of entry-level positions might one be able to obtain in your profession?
So I mentioned the RBT credential, the Registered Behavior Technician. That's the technical name that's given out by the Board for Behavior Analysis. However, at Compass, our entry-level positions are the Behavior Support Clinician. So that's the role where you actually go out into the home, you run programs with the children that you're working with, and you help support the parents, as well as be kind of this middle connection person for the families and all of the services that Charlottesville has to offer. We call the program the Connections Program because we think helping families make connections is the most important piece of what we do. So Compass is unique in that your role can be very robust, and there are a lot of options for the work that you can do. More nationally, the Registered Behavior Technician is the entry-level position, and you can find information about that at the BACB website.
I would say for our agency, social services, there are several entry-level positions, and that's mainly with support staff and front desk staff. So that's a good way to get the basics of how social services works and getting an introduction to the clients and the population that we serve. I actually started just to promote temp jobs. I started as a temporary worker and was only guaranteed 4 months right out of college, working in the energy program. So that was processing heating applications during the winter. And so I've been there for 23 years. So if you have an opportunity to take a temp job somewhere, it might be the job that you end up keeping. So
it's a great way to get your foot in the door.
It's very much a meritocracy, too. The temps that hang around are the ones who are getting the job done.
Yeah.
Some of the least effective school counselors I've ever met are the ones who never had any job other than school counseling. It is vital that you get out there and experience the world, discover yourself, and learn about something other than the cylinder you're going to be in professionally. You also gain credibility with the students and the teachers if you've spent some time outside of the counseling office, maybe as a teacher.
Well, that goes into my next question, David. What qualities make the best employees? And you mentioned some good ones.
Everyone is a mix of strengths and weaknesses. I find that people who are incredibly focused and structured in their day struggle mightily when something comes out of the blue. And people who are really good at dealing with things that happen spontaneously are not necessarily so structured. If you can find some way to combine the two of those so that you can have a plan, but you're also very comfortable if it gets derailed, that kind of adaptability is vital in almost any workplace.
Kelly, what makes a great employee for you?
Heart. You've got to have the heart for the people that you serve. We are here to serve those who are in need, those who are marginalized, those who don't have access to services, who don't know how to access services. So there has to be a level of understanding and appreciation for each individual's circumstances. There can be no judgment. There just has to be unconditional acceptance. You're not going to agree with everything or the decisions that they're making, but it's our job to work with them where they are and walk with them through their journey. So you got to have the heart.
that can't be faked either. Your clients are going to know if you care about them. If you have empathy, they will know it, and if you don't, they will absolutely know it.
The thing that we love the most is someone who's really authentic. So being a genuine person, open to feedback, really invested in enriching the lives of other people, it's pretty invaluable. So we are very focused on change, so change for our families and our clients, but then change for our employees as well, and a lot of growth opportunities. And if you're kind of closed off to that, that would just really get in the way of being successful.
So what has been your experience with having a really bad applicant, bad meaning not good, or a really bad employee?
I was really looking forward to this question.
Okay.
What I find is that every resume is amazing, and every recommender or reference is phenomenal. Often I think they're trying to get rid of them, so they're offering up this great praise so that someone else will hire them.
That does happen.
So perhaps the most amazing resume I ever saw turned into the worst interview, because this person called ahead and said that she would not be able to make the interview, but asked that we could do it via Skype. And so I spent a lot of time making sure I knew how to use Skype and had it entirely ready. And when the time came for the Skype interview, nothing happened. I waited 10 minutes and I called her, and she said, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to make it work, which was a pretty strong sign that she had not done her homework. And then I said, okay, why don't we do it over the phone? And she said, no, I really want to do it on Skype. I'm going to go back and work on it, and I'll get in touch when I get it done. It was unbelievable. I had a panel interview, people sitting around waiting for this to happen. So in 10 minutes, I called her back and said, thank you, but we've decided to go another direction.
Yeah.
And she was shocked.
Well, some people are clueless.
Indeed. The other thing I've realized, though, is that there are some people who provide a great interview but aren't necessarily great at the job. And some people who aren't great interviews who can be wonderful at the job. So we really need to follow somebody around for about a week to figure out if they're good at their job, I think.
And you know, in career services, we coach students on how to deliver an effective interview, but we also want them to be authentic, like you said, Kathleen. We want them to know who they are and to know what they can do, and also to be able to show you by giving examples of their accomplishments of how they can be a good employee. Because you can coach a person to perfection, but that doesn't mean they're going to deliver the goods in the job.
I think one of the funniest and most interesting interviews we had was for someone coming into a management position, and it was via Zoom, which is similar to Skype, but it is a HIPAA-compliant program. And it's a video chat, and when he videoed in, he was on a treadmill at the gym. So we said, it doesn't seem like this is really the best time for this. Why don't we connect later? And then he never connected back with us. So that was kind of the end of that. So
He did you a favor, though.
it was very, very clear. You were right.
Yeah. What's been your experience, Kelly?
Nothing that bad. But I've had really good experience and awesome, I don't want to say luck, but great opportunities to hire really good people. But one incident, the individual did have experience in the specific job that I was looking for. Had a really strong interview, but did not pan out, just not emotionally equipped to deal with the job, the stress of the job. So
I'd say one of my more memorable short interviews was, and this was not for a professional position, but this was back in the 90s when boom boxes were, really popular. And so the young man came into my office like this, with the boom box on. And I said, okay, this is pretty good because I'm tired and this will be a really short interview. And it was a very short interview. I think I may have asked him 3 questions and thanked him for coming in and said, we'll let you know if you are our top candidate. But yeah, you see all types of things when you interview people, from the way they talk, who they bring with them. Some people bring the community with them.
Their parents.
The parents speaking for them. It's just amazing what you can experience when you're interviewing people. But tell us what you would say is the most rewarding aspect rather of your job. Kelly.
You're getting at my soft side with these questions. The best part of my job is not actually what I do during the day, today. It's actually when I leave the office or I get a phone call or I go to the X Park like I did a couple of weekends ago and I run into people that I haven't seen in a long time and they run up to me, they give me a hug, and the one lady, I said, "How are you doing?" She said, "I am doing fabulous." I'm like, "Oh, that's so good." She's been working for 3 years at Jaunt, making $17 an hour. Those are the things that you don't get to see every day, but knowing that you planted a seed and that you contributed to their progress and to their success, and that you have a place in their life. They remember that you were there with them in that journey that I was talking about. That's the part that I love, and I think I'm fortunate that I get to experience that quite often, because Charlottesville is a small town. And I've been doing this a long time, so I know a lot of people and have seen a lot of people make it through. So that's great.
I think that counselors touch people in ways that create ripples that continue into eternity. And there's no way to know what it is that you said or did in a given moment that might resonate forever. I had a young person in Greene County who I didn't know that well, but I knew that at the time she was not very happy. And I felt like I failed because she continued to be unhappy until graduation. A couple of years after, I saw her working, now a man, and talked to him about how he was doing. And he said, "I'm so glad I saw you because I get the chance to thank you. You told me I could be whoever I wanted to be, and it didn't matter what my parents said." Which I don't remember saying that. I don't feel like I would have said it that way, but that was clearly how that young person interpreted it. And he was so much happier than I had ever seen him in high school, and gave me a little bit of the credit for that. And that, I got chills telling you the story just now. It's pretty amazing.
I think the most rewarding part for me is helping make change for practitioners. So I'm supervising the people who are going out into the home and doing the work that they're doing. So I'm able to help change people who can keep making change for other families. Even when they leave Compass, I hope that they'll take some of the skills that they have learned and use them in their interactions with others, or go on and develop a bigger career. So it's really rewarding to see kind of this trickle down of training and growth with everyone who I'm working with. And then, of course, working with children, seeing their progress, that nothing beats that. Like a child talking for the first time or learning a new skill, those are things that can't be replaced, and they are the really warm, fuzzy things that I love.
So what's been your greatest challenge? Only one. Yeah.
If the job were only talking to the clients and helping them, that would be extraordinary. But there are so many other details and roadblocks and things that need to be done, vital realities. But I am convinced that everyone spends too much time in meetings talking about things you already talked about, or hashing through things that don't need to be hashed through anymore. Let's get up and go do something. Let's make something happen.
I like the way you think.
Probably time management is a really difficult thing. Being a community service provider, it's a very autonomous position, so I don't have a set schedule a lot of the time. Neither do the clinicians or supervisors in our program. So it's really being able to figure out how you're going to make your time work, how you can do things effectively, and get the requirements done on time and done well. And that can be really challenging, especially during a difficult week where I am in meetings every single day. My balance shifts to that, and then maybe it's not as much on the kids that I'm working with or the clinicians I'm developing. So that can be pretty challenging.
arguably those meetings drain you and prevent you from doing the job that you intended to do, even when you do get the chance to be.
Yep.
I think on a big picture, our biggest challenge would be that our funding and our programming depends on the political climate at the time. So now, we're seeing a lot of things coming out about increasing work requirements, decreasing benefits to those who need it the most. And it ebbs and it flows, and we can go through a period of where we have a lot of great resources, a lot of funding to really make great change, and then I'm afraid we might be hitting another slump here soon.
So it really does make self-sufficiency just mean different things to different people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It also means your vote matters.
Absolutely. Do you have any questions, our audience here? Any questions at all?
I got a mouthful. This one's for you, Kelly.
We're being recorded.
Kelly, you said with the political climate and predicting that you're going into a slump again. Being that you've been with social services for as long as you have been, are you able to predict it kind of? Or are you just able to realize it once it's happening?
I think we can predict some. When I started in the late 90s, when welfare reform was just getting started, we had a ton of money, supportive services funding, to pay for education and training and, emergency services, and there were programs everywhere. And in the last several years, we have been trying to spend the money. We had various pots of funding with WIOA, with FANTIC, with our VIEW funding, and now that is slowly being cut. We're seeing more waiting lists for services, and because the dollars just aren't there.
So this is technically a two-part question for anyone. For those of you who attended graduate school, do you have any advice? And if there was a time when you felt discouraged going through either undergrad or grad school, any advice? Because I'm practically doing this alone.
You've begun the application process?
For undergrad, yes. And I just got accepted to both George Mason and Radford. So I'm planning on doing my grad school work at Radford for my Master's of Arts in counseling, clinical counseling, and my Doctorate of Psychology in counseling psychology.
Congratulations. So you'll be hopefully staying at Radford from undergrad into graduate school?
My plan is to go to George Mason and then go to Radford.
Got it. There are counselors at George Mason who can talk to you about graduate school opportunities, but you're going to want to do something to prepare for the GRE. Those scores matter to the colleges, even if they don't matter to your actual ability to do the job down the road. You've got to play the game. And make sure you spend some time in the program at George Mason so you know what you're getting into, and make sure that their priorities are aligned with yours and that you really appreciate the people you're going to be working with for 2 or 3 years there.
Yeah, because I technically have some counseling experience under my belt with my online internship at Seventh House. And, since I got that 3 years ago, I fall in love with psychology even more.
I would also say definitely prepare for the GRE. It's a standardized test. It has no bearing on how great of a person you are or how passionate you feel, but it's difficult and it's necessary. Also, make good, strong relationships with your professors. They are the people who will write you letters for the rest of your life. If you can do research, if you can help them, they will help support you. It's easy to think you're just getting through a program and that's it and it's done, but your credentials and your university follow you for your life. So you want to build really strong professional relationships with as many people as you can.
There's a question in the back.
Hello. Okay. So, thank you. This is a very well-rounded panel. It's actually fantastic for me personally. Every one of your jobs encompasses what I want to do. Right now, I'm in the process of going to UVA, guaranteed admission in the BIS program because of my age and family status. So I want to do that in the interdisciplinary studies, focusing on psychology. After that, I'd like to get into something like student counseling, student advising, high school counseling, to give back kind of what I've gotten here at PVCC and help people guide, figure out what they want to do. Myself, I've had my whole life has to do with social services. I came from a very poor family. So thank you for all this advice. For me, I know you were talking about high school counseling, and you were saying it's a master's of what for that?
School counseling.
School counseling specifically. Now, would that encompass also doing like in a college setting like this for student advising, student counseling, or is that something separate?
You could probably turn into that. That might not be the optimum path to take if you wanted to work at a college.
Yeah.
Arguably, the school counseling degree is the least flexible of the graduate degrees we're talking about here. I'd look into something directly associated with student services for college, and it might be a shorter program, too.
Okay. Now, if I decided to do that, it would be an additional degree or additional program to get into the high school counseling. So they're two separate things. There's not one thing that encompasses all of that?
Well, I feel like mental health counseling worked really well for me. I only had to take one extra class based on school counseling.
So that's great. And I'm assuming that, starting with something like Compass, because you only require in the beginning a high school diploma, that would be a great place to get your foot in the door for all of these things, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And in our management team, we have people who have their PhD, PsyD, social work degrees, counseling degrees, and have worked in schools, in universities, just kind of a wide breadth of experience. So we would be able to match, someone like you with a supervisor or advisor who has walked kind of the path you want to take, and they could really help you out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, and I'd definitely like to see you guys after the panel here.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Thank you for your question.
Can I ask you all a question? So these guys are experiencing a pretty stressful time, so this doesn't relate to your path, but it relates to what you do. What would be your suggestions for handling exams and handling final papers and all of that they have come crashing down on them right now? Do you all have some tips for that?
So there's actually a behavior analytic kind of principle and way to study, and it is called SAFMEDS, Say Aloud Fast Minute Every Day. So it is, you can look it up, SAFMED, and it's a way to help you study and prepare and kind of remember and take in information that you're learning. That wouldn't help immediately with the stress that you're feeling, but in preparation, it's really effective to keep things like stuck in your mind.
I find that the kids I work with start to think about the worst case scenario. They're convinced that if this test doesn't go well, they're not going to graduate, their life's going to be a failure, and that's simply not the case. Every one of you sitting here is going to graduate from PVCC. That's clear to me. So recognize that the worst case scenario is not that bad, and no single test is going to define your destiny or change your life, nor is it a reflection on who you are as a person. Do your job, get enough sleep, eat right, take frequent breaks, learn the material, and show up for the test ready to rock and roll and show what you can do.
It's also helpful to talk to the instructor throughout the semester if you're having problems, if you're struggling, because if it's the difference between should you get, say, a C minus or a D plus, you might get that C minus because the instructor knew that you were really trying and that you were letting the instructor know that you needed some assistance.
Thank you for being here. It's interesting. This question is for a family member of mine. How relevant is it in your interest, in your industry, when you're making hiring decisions, that a person is at retirement age and, submitting a job application?
Oh, would someone at retirement age affect the opportunities for employment? Is that what you were asking? we don't take that really into account. We love people who have had experience in all sorts of areas. We think everyone can be a valuable member and join our team. But interestingly enough, my mom is retired and has been trying to apply for jobs, and all of the feedback she gets is that she is overqualified and she is too experienced for the jobs that she's looking for. So this is a pretty big challenge that I think people who are at retirement age have been facing. But it is not one that we worry about or would be a disqualifier for employment.
Just to follow up, so you're not looking at the applicant saying, well, they might only be here for a year or two, and we'd rather entertain someone that's possibly going to be here longer?
That would be a question we'd ask in the interview, possibly. If you brought it up or you said you were interested in retiring or being done with employment, we would want to know how long you could commit to the families you would work with, because having the client and clinician relationship is really important. So if it were to be less than 6 months, we would probably say, probably not. But if it was longer than that, absolutely you would be considered.
Organization? Or are you state organization? Or
we're a private company, but we're located throughout the state.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not the older worker that employers are concerned about hiring, because there is something about life experience that's very important to employers: respect for authority, a track record that's proven. Many times the employers are more concerned about the younger population, millennials, for example, and younger, that they may not stay around long enough. Because typically, people in that generation are more interested in learning what they want and moving on, and learning what they want and moving on. And that is a way that many people are able to get promotions a lot faster. Take the state system, for example. Once you're in, you're kind of there, and unless there's a raise, you're just there. So I think there's a lot to say for the older worker who has that experience and those references and that track record. David?
Especially if they keep up to date. I've struggled with some folks in their 60s who refuse to use email. And in 2018, you have to use email and you have to respond.
Absolutely. You have to remain current, for sure. We're getting ready to wrap up, but I'm going to ask each of you if you have any final remarks about anything that was said, anything that you might want to say that you haven't had a chance to.
The path you end up taking and the path that you think you're on right now might be two entirely different places, and that's okay. Keep your eyes open, explore, look for what you love, make connections with everybody, learn something from everyone you meet, and if you continue to be in search of that passion, it will come and it will be glorious.
I'm stealing a quote from Ellen DeGeneres, which I love, which is, "Be kind to one another."
I think you guys are in a really good position, even just being here and being present and active in the field of psychology. For a while, I think psychology degrees got a really bad reputation where you can't use it, you can't do anything with it, you have to go on, you have to keep moving on and getting more education and being super marketable. I think that is kind of shifting. So being here, learning about careers, being active with the services that PVCC has are going to be really valuable for you guys to be able to find something that matches up with what you're really interested in.
Well, Kathleen, Kelly, and David, I want to thank you for joining us today. The information that you've given has been invaluable. I just want the rest of you to know that they will be here for a few minutes after we conclude, just in case you want to talk to them, learn more about their companies or any of the opportunities that might be available. And so, thank you for coming today, and we will see you next time.
Thank you all.